Right. And because I forgot to touch on what you're asking about in regards to like the socialism and that article, it was, I think it was about like 4 or 5 months ago when that article came out. So I very foggy memory. I only remember the thumbnail and the first sentence of it, but that's kind of a misconception. But like with the fundamentals of socialism, because I've tried to do my best to really research that stuff and everything in comparison to like capitalism. And my understanding on socialism is that it's something believed to be introduced in the dying stages of capitalism. It believes that capitalism is what created the sense of competitiveness amongst humans, and that socialism, part of that belief is that all mankind are naturally cooperative in every way, and that's essentially how we should be. It might kind of hitting the
Well, you're
nail on
not
that
in
a
the
little bit.
wrong ballpark, but we
Yeah.
could push on specifics. So if it was like a forced choice, do you believe people are naturally competitive or naturally cooperative? Most socialists would probably say, well, I'm more on the cooperative side,
Yeah.
but most would probably say, hey, it's not an either or. Think of a football team.
Hmm.
They're extremely competitive with the other team, but that requires them to be cooperative with each other.
Yeah, so it's kind of like a
and
blend of
and
both.
so it can't be an either or, right? I mean, whether it's a football game or a war or a factory, it requires cooperation inside in order to be competitive outside.
Right.
And so human nature gives us the capability of each. And many socialists, I think, would say we've exaggerated the necessity of competition and we've underestimated the importance of cooperation, which isn't saying it's an either or.
Right.
But a couple of other things just about socialism while we're on it, which is there are lots of varieties of it in different countries, different times and histories and so forth. And what Bernie Sanders means when he says he's a democratic socialist is not the same as what everybody who's ever said they're a socialist means.
Yeah.
Um, but one thing that kind of runs through that, which isn't so obviously left or right, is that the social is important.
Hmm.
That imagining there's a world of economics that doesn't have anything to do with social life or a world of politics that doesn't. So that I think what many socialists would say is, the social is really important, the way in which we are socially connected to each other. And ironically, they're closer to many conservatives than they are to some liberal capitalists or something,
Right.
because the conservative tradition has been full of people saying, look, community matters. We shouldn't let the market destroy community. Religion matters. We shouldn't let social change destroy religion.
Right.
Now, socialists may or may not be focused on religion, but they are focused on community and they are focused on the social relations we have. So, if I can just extend the example, when you have deindustrialization and you close down the factories that are the main source of life for some steel town in Western Pennsylvania, or for that matter, mining and what's happening in Arizona,
Hmm.
what happens is not just economic. You can't just say, oh, well, that's a purely market phenomenon, because
Right.
it's the destruction of a community and of people's whole network of relationships with each other and their ability to live their lives the way they want to. So from my point of view, saying community matters isn't exactly left or right. It's something shared between conservatives and socialists. But then how do you fix that? What do you do can lead to pretty different
Yeah, the whole implication behind it, because this is just a example, because everyone's going to understand with Avengers, for example, how at the very end Thanos was saying that he was going to wipe out the entire universe and start it over again, and it'd be a peaceful one.
Yeah.
It's that violent transition, for example, where it's the means to get to that kind of varies in the ideologies. Am I getting that right?
Absolutely, but it doesn't vary neatly on left and right. Let me just,
Yeah.
I mean, I push on this as close to my own expertise I know about.
Yeah.
This is where the Russian Revolution and the Nazis are kind of on the same page, the communists and the far right, And the Nazis are actually the National Socialists in their
Yeah.
official name. And but what they share is the idea that the existing order is so corrupt, we have to smash it and start over and build something different. At least that's the ideology. Now, when you look at the actual practices, it's not quite that clear cut. The Nazis want to keep certain things about Germanists and all that.
Right.
But I think that one of the kinds of extremism, left or right, is what you point to as this demand for a do-over.
Right.
And one of the hallmarks of the rest of the political spectrum, from center right to center left or whatever, is the recognition that there isn't a do-over. You can move forward, you can try to fix problems, but smashing things will usually lead to worse problems.
Yeah. The whole concept of two wrongs don't make a right, because it's kind of you worsen your own cause at the same time, and you degenerate the value of that cause and the values and morals that was supposed to bring as well.
Yeah, and you open the door to all sorts of other problems. So, for myself, violent revolution is a bad plan. Even if you believe in what the revolutionaries are trying to get, it's a bad way to get it. You won't get it, right? Like, you look at the Russian Revolution, and a lot of people who participated in it wanted workers' self-government. Well, they didn't get that. They got an extremely strong state dominating, right?
Yeah.
And revolution usually strengthens the state, right? And so if you want less power from the central state, revolution's a bad way to go about getting that, even if you're justifiably angry at the existing state, the existing government.
Yeah, because I remember reading about the Red Terror with Vladimir Lenin when he was on his rise to power, and I forget the name of the police that he created, but based off what I was reading, that police was supposed to target people that were in association with the Tsar, those of wealth and everything. And when at that time he was also nationalizing the agriculture industry, and which that ultimately went to effect where, if I remember correctly, there was like 5 million Ukrainians that had passed away from manufactured famines, and that'd be kind of like an example of that too, where it's the means of transition as well as the problems where it's the human element that adds that level of corruption and power, I'd say.
It's the human element, absolutely. And part of the human element is not individual, it's the social organization, right? So if you try to attack the family, for example, and you say, oh, the family's tying people to bad habits, you run into a bunch of other ways in which we depend on families. Well, then how are, people going to take care of each other and of children and things? So there are various examples of societies that have tried to reduce reliance on the typical family. And it turns out to be really hard to do.
Right.
My point is not just about the family, it's about, that's an example of how we as people are not just individuals, but are socially connected, and we depend on those social connections. So peasants in Russia depended on their villages. They may not have been completely fair, they may not have been completely equal, but when the villages were completely eliminated in favor of collective farms or something, that made them vulnerable to the state in a new way.
Yeah.
And the same thing go for the right. I mean, you've got people now who are saying, say among some parts of the populist right in the United States, the MAGA crowd, the federal government is doing all of this bad stuff to us, right? We're really angry. Therefore, we want to have a strong leader in the federal government who will fire a lot of people and put in our other people. And it's just, oh, wait a minute, that's actually building the strength of it. I mean, that, the government budget hasn't gone down, it's just shifted from this expense to that expense. If you want to decentralize, then you have to decentralize, not just change who the central power is.